There is a childish lie at the heart of modern life. It is the lie that power belongs somewhere else. Somewhere above you, behind closed doors, in parliament, in boardrooms, in back channels, in ministries, in billionaire compounds, in smoky meetings between men who use the word stakeholder without irony. And because power is imagined as distant, people flatter themselves that they live outside it. They imagine they are merely living, working, posting, dating, networking, choosing, voting, collaborating, self-expressing, and participating in the great democratic circulation of modern life. Nonsense. You are swimming in power all the time, at work, in friendship, in romance, in public speech, in institutions, in status games, in culture, in families, in every room where people compete for attention, influence, legitimacy, safety, admiration, or position. The only question is whether you understand the rules of the game you are already in. And that is where Machiavelli and Robert Greene, strange bedfellows though they may seem, become deeply useful. Now let us begin by clearing away one pious misunderstanding. To discuss power is not necessarily to worship it. This confusion has made fools of many otherwise intelligent people. They hear someone speak plainly about ambition, manipulation, hierarchy, or strategy, and they assume one is endorsing villainy. But that is because they prefer innocence to clarity. They want to imagine the world is governed by sincerity, merit, and good intentions, because that allows them to remain morally clean while being politically blind. Machiavelli had no patience for this. His great scandal was not that he invented political wickedness. That would have been difficult, as wickedness had already enjoyed a long and successful career by the time he arrived. His scandal was that he described power as it actually behaves, rather than as moral vanity wished it behaved. He looked at princes, republics, war, fortune, fear, appearances, institutions, and the instability of human loyalty, and he wrote, without the usual consoling perfume. He understood something essential, that men are not governed solely by reason or virtue, but by fear, ambition, self-interest, insecurity, appetite, vanity, and the management of appearances. Robert Greene, for all the airport bookshop suspicion his name provokes in the pious, operates in much the same territory. The 48 Laws of Power is not a philosophical masterpiece, certainly not, and one need not genuflect before every one of its maxims as though receiving tablets from Sinai. But its enduring popularity rests on one fact. People recognize, often with a jolt of embarrassment, that it describes patterns they have already encountered. The superior who requires deference more than competence. The colleague who advances by optics rather than substance. The flatterer. The saboteur. The status parasite. The man who wants to use your labor, but not your credit. The institution that speaks morally and behaves strategically. The social world in which perception outruns truth. Greene's brilliance, if one may use the word without alarming the clergy, is that he translates old political realism into a modern grammar of careers, offices, social life, and public performance. And that is why these two belong together. Machiavelli gives you the philosophical seriousness. Greene gives you the applied anatomy. Together, they teach a lesson the modern world desperately needs. Power does not disappear in polite societies. It becomes aestheticized. It wears softer clothes. It speaks therapeutic language. It posts about values. It uses words like collaboration, trust, authenticity, empathy, transparency, and inclusion. And beneath the velvet, the same old contests continue. Who leads? Who obeys? Who sets the frame? Who takes credit? Who absorbs blame? Who can be sacrificed? Who can be ignored? Who becomes indispensable? Who becomes replaceable? This is the first great modern lesson. If you do not understand power, you will be ruled by those who do. Now, many people resist this because they would like to believe that merit is enough. Work hard, tell the truth, be decent, produce value. Surely the world will reward that in some proportionate and intelligible fashion. Sometimes it does. Often it does not, because merit without strategy is exposed. Machiavelli knew this in politics. Virtue in the moral sense and virtue in his sense are not identical. The successful actor in public life requires not merely goodness, but force, judgment, timing, adaptability, and the ability to master circumstance rather than be crushed by it. Fortune favors not the innocent, but the prepared, not the pure, but the formidable. And Greene's laws, however theatrically packaged, keep returning to the same point. Competence alone is insufficient if you are naive about human beings. A talented man who humiliates his superior will suffer. A decent man who does not understand envy will be sabotaged. A truthful man who speaks without regard to timing will be destroyed by people whose lies are more tactically sophisticated than his honesty. A hard-working person who never manages appearances will discover, too late, that appearances were part of the work. This is not pleasant. It is merely true. Modern life, especially professional life, is full of people who pride themselves on being above games while being quietly devoured by them. They say, "I don't do politics. I just focus on the work. I assumed everyone meant well. I thought results would speak for themselves. And then comes the promotion they did not get. The idea they originated, but someone else now presents. The alliance formed without them. The smiling betrayal. The meeting after the meeting. The sudden discovery that the moral language of the institution and the operating logic of the institution are not identical. This is often the adult initiation people never expected. Machiavelli helps us understand why it happens. Greene helps us recognize the forms it takes. But there is another reason these writers matter, and it is deeper than office tactics. They show that modern life is full of managed appearances. Machiavelli understood that rulers must appear merciful, faithful, humane, sincere, religious, even when circumstances may require something harder. He did not say appearance was everything. He said that in public life, appearance is one of the instruments through which power stabilizes itself. Look around. Modern politicians do this. Corporations do this. Universities do this. Media institutions do this. Individuals do this online every day. The self has become a kind of tiny principality, endlessly curated for effect. One performs integrity. One performs spontaneity. One performs outrage. One performs concern. One performs superiority to power, while quietly craving power's rewards. Greene's world is full of this too, because modern ambition rarely announces itself as ambition. It arrives dressed as mission, sensitivity, service, disruption, or thought leadership, a phrase so nauseating it ought to qualify as a minor chemical weapon. The point is not that everyone is fake. It is that anyone who does not understand the politics of appearance is dangerously unarmed in a world governed partly by appearances. And here many decent people make a second mistake. They assume that because hypocrisy is disgusting, one ought simply to reject all strategic self-presentation and stride forth nakedly, honest, into the world. This is often not courage. It is vanity disguised as moral purity. Machiavelli would call it foolishness. Greene would call it self-sabotage. Because there is a difference between being insincere and being prudent. You do not reveal every thought in every room. You do not display every grievance at once. You do not advertise every strength before it is secured. You do not make enemies for sport. You do not confuse emotional transparency with truth. A person who cannot govern his self-presentation is not authentic. He is exposed. This is one of the harshest truths about power. Revelation is a privilege, not a default. Now, at this point, the nervous may wonder whether all of this reduces life to manipulation. Are we to become schemers, flatterers, operators in expensive shoes, smiling while calculating angles like minor villains in a prestige drama? No. That would be to misunderstand both the danger and the opportunity here. The real value of Machiavelli and Greene is not that they teach wickedness. It is that they strip away sentimental stupidity. They teach you that human beings are mixed creatures, that institutions are never pure, that loyalty is conditional more often than it is absolute, that envy is common, that fear moves people, that power abhors vacuum, that moral language can conceal strategic behavior, that those who refuse to learn these lessons do not thereby become innocent. They become prey. And once you understand this, a more serious question emerges. How does one remain honorable without being naive? That is the question worth asking, because modern life tempts people into two equally bad errors. The first is innocence. The second is cynicism. The innocent person refuses to see power and is governed by it. The cynical person sees only power and becomes deformed by it. The wiser path is harder. To see power clearly without worshipping it. To understand strategy without losing conscience. To grasp appearances without becoming hollow. To learn caution without surrendering soul. This is where Machiavelli is often read too crudely. He is not interesting because he gives wicked men permission to behave badly. Wicked men never required permission. He is interesting because he forces serious people to confront the world as it is. Unstable, performative, strategic, contingent, and often governed by motives more primal than official rhetoric admits. Greene, at his best, does something similar for the modern social landscape. He reminds you that status, fear, flattery, silence, timing, distance, mystery, and self-command all shape outcomes, whether or not anyone admits it openly. In other words, he restores unpleasant literacy, and unpleasant literacy is still literacy. Nowhere is this more obvious than in the world of careers. Modern professionals are taught technical competence, moral slogans, and networking etiquette. They are not usually taught power. Yet power is everywhere in their lives. Who gets invited in? Who is allowed to fail? Who is judged harshly? Who is forgiven? Who is framed as difficult? Who is framed as leadership material? Who becomes symbolic? Who remains invisible? A person may spend 20 years in institutions and still talk as though success and failure were distributed by spreadsheets and objective review. This is either charming or tragic, depending on how much damage has already been done. Likewise in politics. Voters are asked to believe that every gesture is principle, every phrase conviction, every alliance ideological, every reversal thoughtful growth. Sometimes, no doubt, it is. But just as often, it is positioning, coalition management, fear, ambition, or the adjustment of public appearance to altered circumstances. Machiavelli would urge us to look not at the speech but at the effect. Greene would urge us to study not the stated intention but the pattern. Together, they free us from gullibility. And gullibility is one of the most expensive luxuries in modern life. But perhaps the deepest lesson they offer is about self-command. For power is not merely external. There is power over others, yes, but there is also power over oneself. The inability to master anger, vanity, impulsiveness, the need for recognition, the urge to reveal too much, the hunger to be liked by everyone, the inability to delay gratification. These are weaknesses that make all external life